Let's talk about this issue right now, because when we look at Hackney, I mean, some of the numbers are just hard to believe, and I appreciate that Fitz brought that up. If we look at some of the data, it's almost hard to believe. And again, housing is increasingly unaffordable for the majority of Hackney residents, much like Fitz. The average price of a home has increased 82% in the past 5 years. Imagine that. Now, that might be good if you're a real estate developer, but I'm talking about real people on the ground, the citizens of London, the lifeblood of our city. If they can't afford a home, we don't have a city anymore. What if our teachers, our nurses, our firefighters, our police officers, who I respect, they can't have a place to live in this city, then we don't have a city anymore. We've got one of these emerald cities where there's no real people in there. We've all been to those cities before. It's just not the same thing. And when you look at Hackney, it's seen the biggest average increase in house prices in the country in the past 20 years. I know our cameras are moving around here a little bit because we are actually in motion here. But in the last 20 years, it's seen the single biggest average increase in house prices in the country. And we've got to do something about that. 33% of all households in Hackney are living in overcrowded accommodations. This is unacceptable, unacceptable. And it gets worse. The number of people applying for a council home in Hackney is rising. There are currently nearly 13,000 people on the housing waiting list in Hackney. This is unacceptable, and up to 500 more are added to this list every single month. What is the mayor doing about this? I bet he's not even aware of what's going on here. Last year, they were able to offer properties in Hackney to 1,187 people on the waiting list. But that means at this current rate that it's going to take more than 10 years, yes, 10 years, to house everybody who is currently awaiting, and that's only if no one else applied. This is a crisis, and it's happening right in the middle of our city. In the borough where my company is located, it's hard to even repeat these figures. And so over the last 5 years, the number of families in temporary accommodation in Hackney has steadily increased. And you know, one of our friends, her name is Diana, she's a good friend of my wife, and she had to go into some borough supported housing, and they didn't have anywhere for her to go, so she had to go to a bed and breakfast. And my wife went there with her name is Deanna, and she came home and she said, Brian, you should have seen the state of this place. It was absolutely horrible. The conditions were squalid, and yet they were still paying some really high amount, over £100 a night for this poor temporary accommodation. The truth is, the current plan is costing us more than if we actually had permanent housing in place. And this is one of the many things that's not being addressed by your mayor, and it's something that is number one on my list when it comes to moving into City Hall. My housing policy, it's head and shoulders above the rest of the people running for this office, including the current mayor. He doesn't have any solutions. He's got a 5-year track record of failure. Housing's important to me, and again, I have the exact solution, and I'm going to share it with you now.